If seen in history, the biggest accident in skydiving happened due to a small mistake. This mistake was realized when 18 skydivers had jumped from the plane, and now there was no way back. After jumping from the plane, the skydivers' excitement turned to fear. These were all experienced skydivers, but unfortunately their years of experience did not help here. 16 skydivers were killed in this accident, and the story told by the 2 surviving divers made everyone cry. The accident is now remembered as the Lake Erie disaster. Lake Erie is the 4th largest lake in North America and the 11th largest lake in the world, located in the American state of Ohio. A small airfield called Ortner Airport is 13 kilometers south of Lake Erie. On August 27, 1967, 30 skydivers came to this airport because they were offered a free flight on the B-25 bomber plane used in World War II. As the skydivers began to board the aircraft one by one, the space in the B-25 bomber became scarce. So the pilot chose only 20 divers at the last moment due to excess weight. This selection was made based on the divers' experience and skill level. The remaining 10 divers felt regretful for not being selected, but little did they know that this pilot decision would save their lives. The plan was that the B-25 bomber would take off from Ortner Airport, go to an altitude of 20,000 feet, and drop 18 divers over the same airport. After that, the plane would go higher, and the last 2 divers would jump from 30,000 feet. All these divers had to land back at Ortner Airport with the help of parachutes. Due to bad weather, the flight could not take off in the morning, but the B-25 bomber took off at 3 p.m. All the divers sitting in the plane were very excited. Firstly, they were getting free flights, and secondly, it was their first experience jumping from a bomber plane. After the takeoff of the B-25, a small Cessna 180 plane also took off from the same airport. It was supposed to fly at an altitude of 12,000 feet and capture the skydivers' jumps on camera. Meanwhile, the B-25 plane with the divers was spiraling upwards. Due to bad weather, the pilots of both planes were connected to the nearby air traffic control tower, which told them their location. Finally, after an hour, the B-25 bomber had reached an altitude of 20,000 feet. The pilot radioed the control tower and found out his location. In those times, there was no GPS technology, so if the weather was terrible, the pilot had to take help from the control tower. The control tower told the pilot of the B-25 that he was 9 kilometers away from Ortner Airport, and according to this information, they had reached the drop zone. Exactly 1 minute after that, the pilot of the Cessna 180 also contacted the air traffic controller and found his location relative to the B-25 because, due to bad weather, the Cessna's pilot could not see the B-25. The air traffic controller told the Cessna's pilot that he was 9 kilometers behind the B-25. That is, if the location of the B-25 was 9 kilometers away from Ortner Airfield, then Cessna's location was 9 kilometers behind the B-25 and 18 kilometers away from Ortner Airport. After a few minutes, at an altitude of 20,000 feet, the pilot of the B-25 again found out his location, and this time the controller told him that they had now reached Ortner Airport. At this, the pilot signaled the 18 skydivers to jump. The little mistake that would kill the skydivers had happened, but no one knew it for now. The temperature at this altitude was 30 degrees Celsius, so all the skydivers had put an extra layer of jumpsuits on themselves. All the skydivers jumped together from the B-25 to celebrate their formation during the free fall. At that time, they could see a layer of clouds below and had to open their parachutes only after crossing the clouds. They all started enjoying their free fall, but when they crossed the thick layer of clouds, their excitement suddenly turned to fear. What they saw was not land beneath them, but the deep waters of Lake Erie all around them. At this time, their height was only about 3,000 feet, and everyone immediately deployed their parachutes, hoping they could land on the banks of the lake. Unfortunately, that could not happen. The place where they landed in the water was at least 10 kilometers away from the land. They thought that after landing, they would immediately get out of their wingsuits and swim to wait for help, but what they thought did not happen. Due to the weight of their warm clothes, they couldn't swim above water. 2 divers had removed their shoes and excess weight before landing. These were the only 2 divers who could swim in the water for some time and were later rescued. The remaining 16 divers were unfortunately not alive, and their bodies were not seen by anyone for the next several days. The last body was recovered after a week. This accident made headlines worldwide, and an investigation team was also formed to discover the real reason behind this accident. It was to be found where the B-25 had dropped them and whose fault it was. The air traffic controller said that when the B-25 dropped the skydivers, they were above Ortner Airport. They believed that the skydivers drifted over Lake Erie due to strong winds. The skydivers might have drifted over Lake Erie. But even if we accept the ATC's words for a second, this means that the winds had drifted the skydivers for 20 kilometers, 10 kilometers from Ortner Airport to Lake Erie, and then another 10 kilometers into Lake Erie. When the experts made rough calculations based on that day's wind speed and diving altitude, they found that the divers could drift only up to a maximum of 5 kilometers. That is, there was something wrong with the statement of ATC. That was the ATC's statement, but the B-25 and Cessna's pilots said their location was wrongly informed to them. Ultimately, during the investigation, it came out that when both pilots asked the ATC about their location, the shift of the controllers had changed, and the location given by the second controller to the B-25 was actually the location of the Cessna. That is when the pilot of the B-25 was told that he was over Ortner Airport. At that time, the Cessna 180 was over the airport, and the B-25 was over Lake Erie. In addition, the divers and pilots made the mistake of going against the aviation laws and jumping without seeing the target. For the next 2 years, other skydivers deliberately landed themselves in Lake Erie by wearing floating equipment in memory of the 16 divers. In 1972, the court held the Federal Aviation Authority responsible for the deaths of these 16 divers, and the B-25 pilot's license was forever suspended. Apart from this, a rule was made for the skydivers that they would jump only 50 kilometers away from any water. Please like and share this video of past journey. Thanks for watching, and good luck.